Are we ready to go?
You're ready?
You guys are ready to go.
Okay. So you give us the countdown and we'll start.
In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's session of the Milton Warrant Committee. I'm glad that we have a large number of our membership available and several guests. We have a decent agenda tonight. So Lynn, would you please take the roll as I call us to order?
Sure. We have John, George, Steve, Emily, Lorraine, JJ, Susanna, Christine, Kathy, Dave, and Kristen.
Terrific. Thank you very much. And thank you all for showing. We have a March 16th meeting minutes to approve. Do we have any modifications or changes to that? Kathy?
Yes, just a minor typo in under the chairman's remarks. It says 7:01, it should be 6:01.
Ah, right, I see that.
Okay, and on page 2, on section B, the first sentence, I think it's missing something.
Okay.
George, I'm happy to take a look at that and recirculate for approval for our next meeting.
Yeah, let's look at that. I'm just looking at it now. I think we have to take a little bit of a look at that. So why don't we defer that to our next meeting before we accept those minutes, if everybody's agreeable.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. The next thing we have before us is to look at the table for the capital goods. Thank you. Okay, so the difference here is the animal shelter 231,970. And that was not included in the table that we saw when we approved this last time we met. And I wanted to be sure that everybody was aware of this because this is what went into the warrant. And I want to be sure that we vote on this and everybody's clear that this came from the free cash number that was approved and then added in. Are there any questions about this?
No.
Okay, so if there are no other questions or concerns, the chair will entertain a motion to accept this and recommend a meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have further questioning, information to exchange? Hearing none, Lynn, please take the roll.
John.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Emily.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Susanna.
Yes.
Christine.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Kristen.
Yes.
Muhammad joined us as well. Muhammad.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you all very much. I did, just for your edification, the call that I just received from the town moderator was to indicate that Erin Bradley, who was elected to the select board, has chosen to remain as a member of the warrant committee. It is legal and apparently does not violate any ethics violations, excuse me, any ethics limitations, but it is unusual. But I just wanted you all to know that she is still a member of the. Gather, they are meeting tonight. The select board is meeting tonight, which is why she's not with us. Good luck to Erin as her in a new capacity as the select member of the select board. And the terms that we all have end June 30th anyway, so the overlap will be very limited. With that piece of information, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the conservation land swap that we have been considering. The article that we sent to the warrant, in the warrant, which we sent to the printer, has no recommendation, as we felt that we did not have adequate information. And we have several people who have asked to join us tonight to talk about interesting new information that has come forward. I'm just trying to see now the sequence that we have, because we have Peter Jackson. Are you here? Somewhere I can't see you.
Yes, he's there.
He's there. Okay, Peter. And then we have Sean. Hey, Sean, I see you. I'm just thinking, why don't we have Sean? Why don't you go first, and then we'll have the other presentations. You had sent around a piece of information already, and I think everybody has it, and I hope everybody's had a chance to at least review it, if not study it in detail. But Sean, you have the floor.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. I basically did a prepared statement to keep it short, knowing, time and stuff like that is critical. So, for myself, at the inception of this venture of the project, I envisioned this as an exciting opportunity for this town. And to assist in the creation of a new educational facility that would be an exemplary addition to a town that I admire. As you're aware, the appeal of this town is overwhelming. Proximity feel and a great school system. During our last meeting, Mr. Humphrey shared a vision of pioneers as they ventured west and the towns they created, and noted the initial buildings that were created, a bank and a church. I was struck Mr. Humphreys didn't mention the construction of schools as a foundation of these communities, which is a fundamental component of any town. The early settlers understood this need for an education as a conduit for the betterment of the town. In fact, Horace Mann, who was born in 1796 in Franklin, Massachusetts, began what we know as the public schools to provide common education to all citizens, which he argued is essential to democracy. Mr. Humphreys also noted the intended restrictive covenants of the land conservation land. Noting that, we asked this committee to consider a previously executed Article 97 land swap that occurred on the same conservation parcel for the construction and the extension of Gow Road to Blue Hills Parkway. Of further note, the previous land swap was approved by town meeting in 2001, while the legal deed restrictions were in effect and not expired as they are today. This executed land swap creates a precedent for the current proposed land swap. Also, this past land swap addressed the need of the town as part of the previous school building project. As a town, we have another need now. Also, Mr. Driscoll indicated at our last meeting regarding the potential replication of wetlands to the homing property. We want this committee to know that we've addressed this concern with the Conservation Commission. There is no proposed plan to perform any modifications to homing's property. Mr. Johnson indicated that this isn't our land to take, and others on the committee alluded to this land as a gift to the town. To be clear, this land is owned by the town, and it was sold, not gifted or willed, to the town in 1978. The current deeded owner of this land is the town's Conservation Commission. Also to note, this is not a take, but a swap, where the town will increase the amount of conservation land that it owns, as allowed by Article 97 of the amendments to the state's constitution. The land swap provision in Article 97 allows towns to exchange ownership of conservation land parcels for equivalent or greater amounts of land to be conserved. This is exactly what we are doing. Per the previous Conservation Commission's meeting, the Conservation Commission has voted 6-1 in support of this article. The vote follows similar support of the Select Board and the Parks Commission, which both voted unanimously to support this article. Since our last meeting, we've added additional land that was part of the sale of the lambs, and that was deeded as active recreation and is situated on the north side of Gow Road. This parcel could potentially be developed as parks and recreation fields. Knowing the development of the proposed school will have a component of fields, the School Building Committee, the Parks Commissioners, the Conservation Commission, and the Select Board added the parcel into the equation of the land swap and significantly increased the amount of owned deeded lands to the Conservation Commission. This collaborative response by multiple town boards to address the concerns speaks to a widely held recognition of the town for the construction of a new educational facility as soon as possible. Now, the school building committee is charged with the planning and construction of a new school, not setting educational policies. However, we do believe the creation of a new educational facility will help address concerns expressed by Warrant Committee members in other meetings this year. We hope that the committee acknowledges that a vote in support of this article will achieve the Warrant Committee's stated goals of increasing test scores, increasing rankings by alleviating the existing overcrowding within our district, enabling our educators' ability to provide an excellent education Milton students so solely deserve. In closing, I want to thank the committee for their discussion at the previous meeting. As most of you stated, this is not an easy vote. Select Board member Mike Zulis, during his presentation to the Conservation Commission, noted that there are some votes that carry a legacy to them. This is one of them. This vote will introduce a change to the town, but a change for the betterment of the town. Please note the school committee needed to vote for an overhaul of the current grade configurations of the district to accommodate the recommendations from the school building committee. That was a big change, but the school committee acknowledged it and addressed it unanimously. My committee, most of whom are with me tonight to witness this vote, are excited to work towards the creation of a new educational facility. It will be a shining example of architecture and engineering that will be integrated to the sensitive nature of the environment upon which it will sit. Mr. Chair, at our last meeting, you referred to the fond memories you had and the great experiences you had while attending Milton Public Schools. As a concern, our concern as a committee is a vote against this article will introduce a lengthy delay that will subject numerous students to having their experience of the schools be one of portable trailers that sit upon their playgrounds. What will their memories and experience look like when they look back? Our town owes our students an excellent education and fond memories, unimpeded by the impact of overcrowding. Thank you, and we ask for your support of this article.
Thank you, Sean. Questions by the membership for the chair of the school building committee?
Mr. Chair, are we gonna hear from all of the presenters first, or should we ask the questions now?
I'm open. We can have everybody speak, or you can ask questions in sequence as they present. We have that flexibility, but he's here. And if you have immediate questions, Steve, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it seems like the story has changed since last time we heard it or the time before. I was under the impression that the land was gifted to the town. Now we heard it was sold to the town. That's new to me. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that's new to me. And the other question is, and I've heard different answers to this, if the town does not approve a new school, does the land convert back into conservation land?
That's a good question. Sean, what do you, what is the, was it in fact a sale by the Lambs to the, Amy and Rosamond Lamb were the two ladies who sold it. I remember them as elderly women at the time when I was a kid.
Correct.
And it was sold to the town, not gifted to them. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. It was sold for $178,000 in 1978.
Huh. That was a lot of money then, I know. Okay.
In
Steve,
regard to,
and then the potential for reversion to conservation?
Yeah, so I believe currently right now there is no reverter clause in the article that we are doing. However, we could convert it back to conservation land afterwards. But currently
it wasn't built.
Correct.
That's an interesting point.
Yep.
Okay. Kristen, your hand was up next. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, thank you, Chair. I was just going to comment the same thing. I think a reverter clause would be something that's important to make sure is in the article as it's voted on by town meeting. You know, because I think some people would approve this land for school, but for, you know, opening up is non-conservation land for another use, I think, you know, presents a bigger challenge.
I think that's true. I think many people would like to see it if it isn't going to be a school. They don't want to see it as a Dunkin' Donuts, for example. Okay, let's see. Susanna, I think you were next.
I don't know, Mr. Chair. Those school children do love to hang out at Dunkin' Donuts. I wanted to say, I think this is I think you're right, Mr. O'Rourke, that this is a real, and Mr. Zulus was correct. This is a really telling vote, and it's one that will, change the future of our town and our children's lives. Personally, I see it as I see two issues, and I'm really torn about it. On the one hand is the need for a new school, and I sat on the sort of the precursor to the school building committee where we reviewed the enrollment increases and the class sizes and everything else. So I am, I'm fully convinced of the need for a new school, and I'm sure you could cite better than I could all the crowding issues and the teachers with no classrooms and the libraries being taken over and everything else. So I think that anyone who has accurate information is aware that we need a new school. I'll also say that I know the committee did its work in exploring alternatives to a new school, and there's been some allegations to the contrary. Oh, you didn't think hard enough. You didn't consider putting an 8th floor on the, whatever building. I know for a fact that's not true. The committee has had input from architects. They've had, town planners. They've compared to other towns. They've done their work for over a period of years. I was part of it only for the first couple of years, and I know it's been much more substantial since then. So I do think that when opponents of this come forward and say you just didn't think hard enough, I know that to be factually incorrect. I also know that the committee looked very hard for alternative places in town to build. None of which would have made everybody happy, of course. And when people say, well, why didn't they think about this? They did think about it. They thought about everything. They went to the Catholic Church and talked about building on church land. They did everything that they needed to do in terms of due diligence. So that's the piece about needing a new school. My concern is that we're now hearing from a number of people who are opposed to building it in this particular location. And I guess I would want to hear from them. We got a couple of letters today. I would want to hear from those people about their specific concerns, particularly I think it's Home Inc.,
Yes.
which is an organization with which I'm not familiar. I know that they went into some detail in their letters, because it's concerning to me, even if we have the same amount of conservation land, if the land that we're taking acts as a detriment to the abutters and the people who use that land. So I think those people have a legitimate complaint. I don't, choosing not to do this, I don't know what the alternative is. And I agree with you, Mr. O'Rourke, that something has to be done for the sake of the children, for the sake of ensuring the quality of the town. This is why people move here. This is why our property values are what they are, because we want to have excellent schools for our kids. So I applaud your work, and I just want to confirm that it's been diligent and exhaustive for people who doubt that. And I look forward to hearing from those who had specific concerns about the site.
Thank you. I would also like to remind all of us that there is often some background noise that might come in. If you are not speaking, I will ask you to please mute in the event that stuff, stuff that is in your background filters through. It may make it difficult, for example, for Lynn to take the minutes because she would get that interference. So if we can just be mindful of that, that would be helpful. JJ, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. O'Rourke, for your presentation and your hard work. The one question to follow up on Steve's question, I guess, is I think it's good news to some of us, who are worried about overriding the will of a person who clearly loved that land, that the land was sold to Milton and it's owned by Milton. I guess what I'm wondering now is why previously were we worried about the person's will and overriding her intentions? Was it sold with restrictions? Were there covenants? Is there anything? If you could address that, I just want to hear your opinion on that. Thank you.
John, do you have any information about that? Were there restrictions in the sale, transfer from the Lambs to the town?
Yeah, correct. So there were, and I'll see if I can do it as best off the top of my head. And there's some nuances here that I kind of want to clarify too. That, as you can tell, this is a very technical thing. So the deed restriction restrictions that were on there basically had three that I remember. Was the first was no structure shall be erected on it. The second was the land shall not be regraded or disturbed. And then the third was that the shrubs and everything shall be maintained, as they needed. Now, those are the deed restrictions. The label, if I call it that, of conservation land that went onto this is a label that lasts in perpetuity. And Kevin Freitag did his best to display this. And almost every time I hear him speak, I learn something new about this whole thing. So the deed restrictions that I was talking about, the three individual things, those are the things under Mass General Law that expire after 30 years. So in 1978, they expired in 2008. As I mentioned, in 2001, where they were in effect, there was regrading of that land to build the road. You know what I mean? That's some of the stuff that we've noticed. The conservation label is in it for perpetuity. And what we're doing is utilizing portions of Article 97, which is a legal way of doing it, of taking it out of conservation land. Partly what we know too is, there's still a portion of this parcel that is going to remain. We've called it the hockey stick portion that's on the other side of Gow Road. If you read the deed, they talk about they wanted for protection of the watershed, essentially Pine Tree Brook. So as part of this, by switching this conservation land to the other side of Gow Road, where we were going to have fields potentially at some point, that's further protection of that watershed. So these are all the additional things that have come up that I think are very relevant to this conversation.
Okay. Dave, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Mr. O'Rourke, thank you for your presentation tonight. And thank you for the document that you sent to the Warrant Committee today that had the maps on it and some of the explanations of these issues. That was excellent. So thank you for those. And I wanted to add, one note on to what Susanna said when she said that there had been sort of complaints in the community, often on social media, that hadn't been done, that things had not been thought through. It's clear that's not the case. Another thing that I did hear on social media was that people were saying that they were unaware of this process, that this was coming out of nowhere, and that they'd never heard about it. Again, that's invalid. It's clear from the hard work that your committee's been doing, all subject to open meetings and discussion, that there has been plenty of conversation, and that maybe people just need themselves to pay more attention to what's going on in the town. One question that I have, and again, this is a lengthy process with regards to the land swap, Article 97. We're at the beginning of it, but we take some guidance. We've already started talking about the intent and the wishes of the donor, because in order for this to succeed as an Article 97 land disposition process, there are 6 independent conditions that have to all be met. One of them being that it's not contrary to the express wishes of the persons who donated or sold the parcel or interest therein. So we'll let the lawyers hash that out. What did they actually mean in their deed when they said that they wanted it to be conservation land? But specifically, there's another requirement that needs to be met. I'd be interested, and I know you have other members of your community there, of your committee there. So if somebody has the answer, would love to hear it. One of them is that as part of this disposition, the value of that which is swapped is that the town essentially has to receive equal or greater fair market value or value in proposed use. Just looking at the parcels that were we, the town, would be getting. So we can call it a swap. We can also call it a trade. Is it a good trade? Is it a good deal? Looking at the parcels that we're getting, at least two of them to me seem to be really tucked in behind other conservation land that can't be used. The one by Pine Tree Brook, maybe we could put a couple houses in there, I don't know. But the questions that I'm going to have is, as part of what we have to do, we can talk about Save the Children and we can talk about all that stuff, but sometimes we just want to know, is it a good deal? Do you have a sense of the fair market value of let's just call it the land property against what's on the table to give us a sense of that? So again, thank you, and that's my question.
Okay to respond, Mr. Chair? Sorry, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was following my own directions. I apologize.
No
So
problem.
the issue that we have to address and see if we can have a response from the building committee is, are we getting like for like effectively? Is this is this a close to apples and apples monetary or usable consideration here? Sean, I know you've worked through this, and you probably do have an answer to that.
I do. So partially is I would defer to the vote that you saw from the Conservation Commission. That's partly what they weighed against their decision to come in 6-1. The other thing to keep in mind too, as part of the process that you mentioned, Mr. Humphries, is this has to go up to the state legislature where there's additional review, and that additional kind of weighing the parcels comes into play. The unique thing, me being a math geek on these type of things, is for these parcels, if it's worth a lot to develop, it's typically not worth a lot in the equity of the land from an environmental point of view. Whereas if it's not worth a lot of money in the financial end, it's worth a lot in the equity for the environmental view. So they kind of balance out, you know what I mean? The parcel that's on Randolph Ave, there's been note that you can't build on that. And the Conservation Commission debated that at length, that there are other developments on Randolph Ave for potential 40Bs that would be doing the exact same thing. Essentially, the wetlands that occur on there are on the boundary of Randolph Ave, right at the edge of the parcel. The remainder of that is all upland wooded area. So you're allowed to cross over that wetlands to access that upland and then build up there. So, to essentially answer your question for the valuing of them, myself, I would defer to the Conservation Commission. That's why what we try to do too is increase it. We're doubling the amount. So even if equity-wise it wasn't there, the ratio now from a 2-to-1 kind of balances that out again too. So it's been a long process, and we were doing, that's kind of how we did it to make everybody happy. I mean, our goal for this, as I continuously state, is to not have any enemies on this project. We want it to be a win for everybody in the town.
Good luck with that one.
I'm trying my hardest.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Listen, I will echo what others have said. There is no question that this process has been arduous. It has been exhaustively thorough, and having been, I remember the first time you came before us. I've been chair for 5 years. This has been in the works for 4 of those 5. So there is no discussion. So for those of our townspeople and neighbors who say they're unaware of it, or they don't think there's been adequate consideration or deliberation, I take issue with that, because I think there has been. And one of the reasons why we're going through this is you've exhausted everything, and here we are. I think that the next issue that we would have to face would be to hear from the Home Inc. and others who have come to speak. Sean, thank you. You're welcome to stay. I will remind the Warrant Committee, it is our purview to ask these questions and to facilitate the discussion on behalf of the town meeting. It is the town meeting's decision, obviously, to make this. So as we work through these, our job basically is to ensure that the appropriate levels of discernment have gone into the conversations, the research, the work, etc., so that when we come up with our recommendation to the town meeting, they can be assured that appropriate diligence has been accomplished for this purpose.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
I believe it's Warrant Committee member, Mr. Driscoll, who's echoing, which is very distracting. Mr. Driscoll, could you mute yourself if you're not talking? Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks. I wasn't quite sure who it was. But anyway, okay. So we still have a couple of visitors who would like to speak to us. We have Mr. Jackson and who is with you? From Home Inc., I'm guessing, yes?
I don't know that they're with me, but I'm by myself.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I don't know if someone from Home Inc. is on or not.
Yeah,
someone
Mr.
from Home Inc. Home Inc. did request to come and speak to us, but
Yeah.
you're here with us now, and so you have the floor.
Thank you. I didn't prepare remarks because I didn't realize that I'd have an opportunity to speak, but I did send a copy of the testimony I gave to school building committee earlier this week. I hardly know where to begin, both about the project as a whole and some of the questions that have been asked and things that have been said tonight, but let me just make a few points quickly. When the town bought the land from the Land Sisters, that was subsidized with $26,333 of federal land. That by itself means that the conservation restriction does not expire, and it means that that federal donation to the acquisition of the property also has its own restrictions. The building committee and the town council was not aware that there was federal participation in this. No, I'm sorry that happened, but it did happen. When the school building committee went to the park commission, it was a very last minute deal. They were told, the park commission was told on Thursday afternoon, April 7th, that they would have a meeting. On Tuesday morning, April 12th, which barely got under the time frame for public notice of a meeting. There was no opportunity for them to learn about the issue, to talk to some of their constituents and consider what was before them. I spoke to several of them, both staff and commission members after the meeting. They had no knowledge of, or nor were they given any briefing on Article 97, nor the process to convert Article 97 land. All I can tell you is the conversion of parkland to conservation land by itself is considered a taking under Article 97, which means that they are due 6.9 or whatever the property is, they're due that much in replacement land. There has been no analysis or offer from the school building committee to replace the Article 97 land that's being taken from the park board. Let's see. There has been no discussion of costs or how this thing would be funded. I really like the committee's suggestion that there be a reverter clause, because once it's transferred legislatively to the town for general purposes, there's nothing to stop the selectmen from using the land in any way they see fit. So I would suggest that the transfer not be completed, even if it's voted to transfer and everybody, if it gets approved as a transfer, I think that should not be completed from a legal point of view until the school is fully funded. And then at some point, if the school's not fully funded, for it to go back to its conservation use. That's not that I support the school use, but I think it's only fair that there be that reverter clause. So I'm glad that you guys brought it up. In terms of competitive fair market value, the Conservation Commission, this was brought up twice at the Conservation Commission in public meetings. There was also a site walk, and both times the commission asked for relative valuation between the parcels. None was offered. There was a statement that, well, how do you do it? It's comparing apples to oranges, but there is a whole field called ecosystem valuation where people do look at the ecosystem values, the value of habitat and watershed protection and carbon sequestration and all of the values that land holds, and looks for comparative values, but it was ignored. It was never addressed. Those are significant values. A DCR forester came out and walked the land and talked about the thousands of tons of carbon that was sequestered in the trees on that land and the soils, and that, it would be a huge loss. And in these days, when we're really aware of climate change and the changes of an environment, cutting down this land for buildings and parking lots, which are carbon producers, is really opposed to everything that's being done in the ecological community these days. I don't know if any of you get National Geographic, but this month's cover is the forests and how important they are to protecting the environment and part of dealing with climate change. The whole issue has to do with protecting forests. And here we are talking about this. About the land swaps, the land on Herrick Drive is a wetland. It's not developable, never be developed. It's already protected. The land on Randolph Avenue, the committee did, and the Conservation Committee talked about how that could be made accessible. They'd have to build a driveway over the wetlands, and then it gets to an upland area. As far as I'm concerned, maybe that's a good spot for the school. It's a tough roadway, which they've acknowledged. But the other thing which I'm not really conversant in is apparently that land is hemmed in by land that's already protected by the Conservation Commission. It's general purpose town land. But my understanding is that it's identified as protected habitat by the state, and would have development restrictions based on that. I'm not an expert in that. I can't talk to it too much. And like I said, the land on across Guile Road, that's parkland and would have to be replaced with an equivalent quantity of parkland, an issue that neither the school committee nor the town council has at all addressed. So it's not in any way an equivalent swap. I agree that the schools have issues. Several members have said tonight that it's been thoroughly reviewed and all the alternatives explored. I disagree with that. There was last time we did the schools, there was a parcel on Hillside Street that was considered for a school location. It was rejected, but that was 23 acres of town land, which in 2004, the town sold to the Copeland Foundation, and used the money from the Copeland Foundation to help support schools. Whether there was any approach to the Copeland Foundation, whether they'd be willing to sell some land back to the town to use that for school land, I don't know. I haven't seen anything in the building committee minutes or anything else of a creative and significant review of the existing school campuses to see their ability to absorb additional space and solve some of this problem. So, right there's, a couple of different alternatives that I don't feel were reviewed. I agree wholeheartedly that we have to address school overcrowding. I agree wholeheartedly that the school building committee has worked very hard and diligently to try to find a solution to this problem. It's a tough one in town. We don't have a lot of land in town, but I don't think they've looked at the universe of options available to us and to take a valuable piece. I don't know if any of you have been out on the Lamb property, what we're calling the Lamb Woods. There are not woods like that in private hands in Milton. There are very few parcels in the Blue Hills Reservation, which I travel all the time, that have the kind of ecological values, or at least woodland values. I can't say ecological values, but woodland, the quality of woodland of this parcel. I just think it's the wrong proposal and the wrong location. And I hope that you give pause in your consideration. I know you also today got a letter from the Friends of the Blue Hills Parkway, which I thought was very eloquent. I just read it about a half hour ago. I thought it was very eloquent. So I appreciate your review and do what you think is best for the town.
Thank you very much. We also have Mr. Peary. Are you on? I can't tell from my screen if you're here or not. Who had written and asked if they could speak to us. Steve Peary. If
Yes,
you are.
He's here under Joanne Bonner. We're
Okay.
zooming together.
Okay, that's it. Very good. Okay, you have the floor. You requested time, and we're interested to hear what you have to say. We circulated your letter, and please, you have the floor.
Can you put my video on? It's blocked. Can you put on my video?
Who's talking?
Do that.
I'm trying to get my video on.
I think you control that.
No, it says that it's blocked.
Oh, okay. Well,
What's the member's name?
Joanne Bonner. It says unable because the host has stopped it.
That's very strange. It should be fixed.
All right, there we go.
There you go. Okay.
Steve?
All right. You have 7 minutes. Take it away.
Thank you. My name is Steve Peary. I'm the president and a resident of Home Inc. Contrary to what our former lawyer had said, on April 5th, 2022 Conservation Commission meeting, most residents of Home Inc. believe building a school next to our property on a piece of prime conservation land is a bad idea. The Lamb sisters sold Home Inc. their land for the express purpose of providing Milton's elderly with reasonable housing in a beautiful home-like setting. We are a community of seniors who have settled in and love the relative peace we find here. If a school is built next to us, we will have a high school and its athletic fields on one border, a newly approved 50-plus housing units with a retail space across the parkway from us, plus this proposed school. We would be nearly surrounded by development, something none of us suspected, knowing conservation land was all around us. Conservation land are two meaningless words. The town wants to build a school on it. There would be a dozen units located right on the line separating Home Inc. from the proposed construction site. These units most likely would be difficult to turn over, money from which Home Inc. depends upon to maintain the property and serve the residents. This would affect all of us adversely. These are a few of my responses contrary to our former lawyer's comments on the April 5th meeting. We, meaning any resident of Home Inc., did not indicate to our lawyer that we thought the land swap would be in the best interest of the town and should be passed. We never had a vote not to oppose the project. We never had a vote on anything related to the proposed project. We never indicated that at one time we had concerns, but now we were comfortable with the proposed school project. We thought it was unbelievable that a lawyer who supposedly was representing us would use his final moments as our lawyer to say the land swap proposal will pass overwhelmingly at town meeting, and inferring that we understood that. That our lawyer, people who had no connection to Home Inc., were telling us that they were outraged by what they heard. We are a community of seniors, most of whom are not savvy to the workings of town government, hiring lawyers and speaking on our own behalf. Organizing is not something we're good at and shouldn't have to do. However, like all communities, neighbors talk. Most people feel the planning in its final stages has been hurried along, that politics is playing a bigger part in common sense and fairness. In spite of all the information that was handed to them, the Conservation Commission apparently was unmoved regarding the value and unique aspects of this parcel of land possesses. Instead of protecting it, it was voted away by approving the land swap. They must not have read the letter that the state of Massachusetts forestry expert who walked the parcel and who marveled at its uniqueness, diversity. Taking this conservation land for a school is not in the town's best interest. A town that prides itself in the importance of preserving its green space. Aside from being free, if this valuable conservation land next to Home Inc. is said to be the only land that can be used for a new school, then you must have missed something. On the project that could take 8 or more years to complete, wouldn't it be better to take the extra time you might need to get it right? There are too many loose ends, too many unanswered questions, too many things done in a hurry to feel that this process is ready to pass. As a concerned Milton resident, I urge those on the Warrant Committee not to support the school building committee's plans as currently proposed.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sending the letter in advance. Any questions by the membership? Scott, let's see, I see your hand first.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
I have this is a conundrum. And tonight, as it's gone down, as usual, we hear half the story from each party. And as the scene unfolds and the minutia seems to get more presented, we get it's like this rabbit hole that we keep going down. It just never ends. There may very well be a need for a school, but are we doing it the smartest way possible? And I'll give you an example. Back in like the early 1900s, there was some guy, I think he was running for president. I cannot remember who his name was. And he made a statement. He said, everything that needs to be invented or is going to be invented has already been invented. And an interesting thing, that was like in like 1910, 1918, somewhere in that area. And as I sit here and listen to this, and then when Mr. Jackson said that the Copeland Foundation bought 23 acres of land from the town, and by the way, my neighbors will probably hate me for saying this. I live on Hillside Street. But if there's 23 acres there, and I don't want to get an ego match with the committee. The committee has done unbelievable work. It's probably the last question or thing they want to hear is that, did anybody ask the Copelands? And maybe they well did. But if, in fact, they would just say, we'll sell you, what is it, 6 acres of land we need? Sean, nod your head. If they say, we'll sell you 6 acres, and you don't have to go through the whole Chapter 97 process, it's bizarre, but after all this work, it might be a no-brainer to do that. It might be it's going to be less expensive legally. There's no question about it. but it might be a solution. I mean, what I like about what Mr. Jackson said is he was offering solutions. And it's not just a complaint, and he gave evidence also. And I guess I'm going to ask that question of Mr. O'Rourke. Have you talked to the Copelands? Is it possible? And I know you don't want to hear this. I know. Unquestionably, you need like a hole in the head, but maybe everything that's been invented, that's going to be invented, has not been invented. So I'll turn it over to you.
You need to raise your hand again now. Or just wait a minute.
Let's let them finish this.
Okay to respond, Mr. Chair.
Please.
Yeah, so initially when our committee was formed, Ms. Johnson, Mary Gormley was superintendent. She also sits on the Copeland Foundation. So we did identify that as a potential early on, but it was not available. So it is something that we did look at. So, you know, as an engineer, I never say nothing, you know, we're done inventing anything, you know what I mean? Our committee has, the problem I have is with my presentations I have to do, I'm limited to 10 minutes. We've got 3 years worth of study and work that not just myself, but 8 other committee members have all done. So trying to summarize that in short 10-minute spits is very tough. So I can almost guarantee any of the things that are presented as options for us, did we look at it? We have.
Okay, I was just asking, just on the long shot, you know, I wasn't insinuating, I wasn't trying to offend you in any way whatsoever. I hope you know that.
If I may, I very thick skin. I work in construction for an industry. I take no offense to anything. I actually welcome open, honest conversation. So I appreciate it, and I don't take offense.
We have something in common. I've worked in the construction industry for years too, along with other industries. The other issues besides that kind of come to mind is that there were terms of sale, it appears. I'm not sure if that's actually accurate, but there were terms of sale, possibly it's been stated, when the land was sold. And again, this is an uphill fight. And the environmental issues too. You can't ignore the environmental issues. I don't know. I don't know if Mr. Jackson has gone to talk to the Copeland Foundation. Maybe he should go and maybe he could get a different answer. Who knows? But if he could, I'd be more than willing to support that, even as a resident of Hillside Street, not wanting a school on my street. But you know what? Take one for the team.
Susanna, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I also live on Hillside Street, so I would really love to hear where this land is. I'm trying to picture the entire street. I know this might be like a little bit off topic, but can someone tell me really quickly where the millions of acres of land on Hillside Street are? Because I can't picture them. Yeah, sure. Mr. Chair, can Mr. Jackson answer? That it was his.
Yes, go ahead.
The land parallels and is one building lot away from Ford Ranch Road. There's a narrow entrance, probably 100 feet wide on Hillside Street, and then it goes back and widens out as you get closer to the golf course. But it's a total of 23 acres there.
Thank you. I'm interested to know that's there, and I rely on Mr. O'Rourke and former Superintendent Gormley to have sought that out. I wanted to the gentleman who spoke. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering your name, and I'm not going to call you Joanne Bonner, sir, even though that's what it says under your picture. So I apologize for not getting your name, but your presentation was outstanding, and I have so much sympathy for the residents of Homing, which is an organization of which I was not aware. I now understand that it's a community of seniors. Can you? I don't want to go too far into the weeds, so I'll just say this first. It sounds like throughout this process, there may have been some lack of communication. I understand that the school building committee endeavored to communicate with residents and with the general members of the town, but it sounds like the members of Home Inc. specifically, and perhaps others, weren't aware of some of the work that the school building committee was putting in. For what, maybe that's just because it was too much information to give. Like I sat on the precursor to the school building committee for 2 years while we explored these options. And the school building committee did only much more than that. So there's a lot of information out there, but I think ultimately at some point we have to trust the expertise of this group of people who's worked on it for 3 years. I regret that the members of Home Inc. and other people didn't have the information that they needed. I'm curious, and I apologize that I'm not familiar, sir, whose name I've forgotten. Can you, how many people live in Home Inc. and how big is the community? Just very quickly, I'm just trying to get a sense of the sort of framework of, and it sounds like you're being affected by new commercial development, living next to a high school, which I have a high school student, cannot be a picnic because those kids are obnoxious. And then the potential of a new school. I understand how that's disheartening. Can you say anything about sort of the demographics of the community so I can picture it a little bit?
You're muted. And please also give your name again and your address so we can incorporate it into the minutes.
Yeah, Steve Peary from Home Inc.
But your street address would be helpful too.
Oh, sorry. 4 Sugar Maple Lane.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, tell them who lives there. They want to know who lives there.
Oh, okay.
98.
There's approximately 145 residents that live there in 98 units.
Thank you. Then I'll quit because other people have their hands up, but I am concerned about the fundamental change that this initiative would make to the living conditions of these seniors who have bought into these homes in this community, reliant upon the understanding that the town was going to keep to its covenants for conservation land. So I just want to make that point, and now I know other people are waiting.
Okay, let's see. Of the membership, John, you've had your hand up. Please go.
Yes, George, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I just want to give a history of that land that Copeland bought. They actually
Mr.
helped the
Chair,
town
can
out.
I stop for a second? If John is going to recuse himself from the vote, he cannot speak during the discussion regarding this.
Has he recused himself?
He did
I'm
it the
gonna,
last
yeah.
time we voted on this,
Well, we're revoting, I think.
right? So if he chooses to recuse himself, he cannot discuss this.
John, are
I'm
you
just giving you a history on Hillside Street, a piece of property that has nothing to do with this guy Road.
But the point has been raised, and I think it is a valid one. If you are participating in the conversation and you're accusing yourself, I would love to hear the information, but Aaron has a point.
All right. Thank you.
Are you going to speak? Do I-
Let's see. Sean, did you have something to say?
Yeah, we have. I'm going to put our hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Initially, as we identified this site, we did engage with Home Inc. in August of last year. We had to sit down with members of their board, at which point afterwards, they were represented by Ned Corcoran as an attorney. So from that point until the point they released Ned, our direction was to have all conversations with Mr. Corcoran. We weren't allowed to contact members of Home Inc. directly. So for the period, from essentially September all the way through, Mr. Corcoran was our point of contact. We did hold 2 neighborhood meetings that Home Inc. did participate in as part of that. And they were represented by Mr. Corcoran at those. And then finally, before, as this was going into town meeting, producing this article, we went back to Home Inc. and met with the entire board and Mr. Corcoran at their conference room. We sat in person to, again, provide an update of what we were doing. At that meeting, my request was, upon concluding the meeting, knowing that there would be questions that come up of the stance of Home Inc. or where they stood, I asked essentially, where do you guys stand? Just so I could relay it back to people as it came up. And if they were opposed to it, I was totally fine. I didn't, expect anything different. But, their attorney in their presence said that they were not opposed but had concerns. Since then, they presented a list of concerns to us as a committee, and we want to integrate those in. We want their input. We want them at the table as this project progresses. We're not trying to exclude anybody. We have never once tried to exclude anybody, whether it's the Pine Tree Brook neighborhood, Blue Hills Parkway, Friends of Blue Hill Parkway, and especially Homing, because they're the only abutter. And I just wanted to clarify that for the meeting. Thank you.
Right. Dave, your hand was up next.
Thank you. Again, this is important vote, a major vote. We have members of the public here. Members of the public are going to watch this. I know that the last time we discussed that I went back to rewatch it on Milton Access Television, and I saw more views on the last Warrant Committee meeting that we had than any other video that I recall. And I think it was probably the discussion of this that had something to do with that. In order to continue this open, full, and public debate discussion, I would like to use some of my time to ask of member John Driscoll to share with us the information that he has with regards to the history of that property. I would ask that he be reminded by the chair, if he is to recuse himself, that he should refrain from offering an opinion or seeking to make a vote. But I think that it would be important if there is information about that property, which has been germane to this discussion, and it has been discussion, that he has some of my time to be able to share that with us. Thank you.
I will allow that. John, if you want to share factual information that is of import to this discussion point, I think we'd be interested to hear it.
Yeah, George, I just want to let everybody know the Copelands came to the town's rescue with the accreditation. They bought that land and they were able to buy books to get the accreditation. And I don't think there's much buildable land. It's a lot of wetlands there. I'm not an expert, but I'm just, I don't know how many acres you could get out of there, but the Copelands did buy that land to help with the accreditation problem with the schools. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, that's interesting information to have, though. Thank you very much, and Dave, thank you for facilitating that. Do you have other things, Dave, to add? Okay, let's see. Kathy, your hand was up next.
I just have a quick point of clarification. Mr. Jackson mentioned that during the original sale, there was federal participation, and that with that federal participation, that would add additional restrictions. Has Kevin Freitag weighed in on that, or is anybody vetted that? Or that's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, I think that's the first many of us have heard of that. Sean, is there a perspective on that?
Yeah, originally we've been working with town council to clarify that. We haven't been provided any information outside of what we've heard tonight that federal money has been used. However, again, going back to the precedent of the previous land swap, if it was an issue back in 2001, it would have been raised at that point, and that's the importance of that previous land swap, essentially setting a precedent for what we're doing tonight, or what we're doing now.
Kathy, you don't look satisfied.
We may have done it, but we may have done it wrong. And I guess I would say two wrongs don't make a right. So I think the legal people should weigh in on that.
Yeah, that's probably so. Mr. Jackson, do you have something to add?
Yes. The land swap in 2001 for the building Guile Road was a very small piece of land. I don't know how many square feet, right down where the new road meets Blue Hill Parkway. And there was an Article 97 land swap, but it may have been like 1,400 square feet or something very small. I haven't measured it. The road that connects from Guile Road down to the Blue Hill Parkway, there's no evidence of any Article 97 process done on that, which there should have been. I think it was an oversight. The schools built a roadway across conservation and park department land without any official process or approval. And I don't know, I don't know, but I know there wasn't any formal process. And I think, Sean, you acknowledge that. What was the other point I was going to make? I kind of missed it.
It's all right. If it comes back to you, I'll recognize you again.
Yes,
We've got to keep moving. I still have a hand up from home. I'm sorry, Steve, your hand is up. Steve, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have I guess, a point of clarification. The last time we discussed this a week or two ago, we requested that the Conservation Committee come before the Warrant Committee to discuss this and give us a presentation. And all we heard was from the school building committee that they voted 6-1. I don't have any context from that or what the debate was or any kind of thing. It just, who knows if it got pushed through or if it was really debated correctly. I think we deserve that before we make a decision.
I don't disagree. They have been invited to come. I will tell you that. And we've received several pieces of information which we have shared, but they have been invited to come. I gather there have been conflicts from time to time, but they're not here, unfortunately. So I do take the point. Let's see, Home Inc., you still have something to say?
Yep. I'm Ned Byer.
Yes. My name's Ned Byer. I'm a resident of Home Inc. I've been a resident of the town of Milton most of my life.
Please give your street address also for the minutes, sir.
I'm on 6 Cherry Blossom Way.
Thank you.
And I'm the past president of Home Inc. And I was the president last fall when first contacted by the school building committee. And our first contact with them was August 2nd. And we met with them and we were told that they would be building a new school on Guile Road in the conservation land next to Home Inc. They told us they will trade property with the town and Conservation Commission to make this happen. And we were also told this is a done deal. This location is the best spot, they said, and the only spot they could find for the school. It is free, with no cost to acquire the land. 2 days later, on August 4th, the Milton Times published a front page story with drawings of the proposed school at that location. The residents of Home Inc. were very upset with the location, not with the need for a school because they understood that it can be overcrowded. We hired a lawyer to protect our rights and observe the progress. I think my reaction to the meeting we held on August 2nd, I was very concerned about the attitude of the school building committee. In my opinion, it was like, we have done this for the kids. Don't even bother to object and take us on. This is a done deal. So 6 months or 7 months went by. I could have talked to Sean O'Rourke, but I never heard from him. So fast forward to March 26th, and there was a march of the conservation property by the Conservation Commission with 50 or so concerned people on that walk. Finally, the Conservation Commission meeting was held, and our former lawyer sold us out and says Home Inc. is in favor of the land swap with the town. Nothing could be further from the truth. It appears to be a 6.8 acre buildable piece of property for 14 plus acres at 3 other locations in town, locations that were either wet, inaccessible, and probably not buildable. It reminds me in a sense of the Red Sox trading Mookie Betts to the Dodgers not so long ago, and or selling Babe Ruth to the Yankees back in the early 1990s. Both bad deals also. So no, we're not in favor of this land swap of conservation land on the south side of Guile Road with 3 other parcels that are far less valuable. We feel the school building committee has not found an acceptable location for the new school. We feel the warrant committee should either A, not give a recommendation at all to the town on May 16th at the town meeting, or give a recommendation of no, don't make the swap of lands. What this really comes down to is values. Honesty, integrity, and respect. Lack of integrity can be defined as the use of any underhanded method to gain any kind of advantage. Lack of respect is a disregard for the feelings, wishes, and rights of others. And lack of honesty is a lack of fairness and straightforwardness of conduct. In my opinion, and it's my opinion, the building committee has shown a lack of these values in this process and should not be rewarded for it with an inequitable land swap resulting in the potential approval by the town of a new school in a bad location. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you're muted.
Sorry, I follow my own rules. I forget to turn myself on. Just to correct the minutes, you were, thank you for your testimony, but I will correct you on one score. Babe Ruth was traded to the Yankee in January of 1920, not in the 1990s. I do want to make sure that our minutes are accurate. JJ, your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I recognize that, you know, this process is difficult probably for everyone involved. And, you know, I'm so glad that the people from Home Inc. are showing up and telling us about the problems. I do want to know, maybe Mr. O'Rourke can talk to this, how close, and I know there's maps, but how close is the proposed school site to Home Inc.? Is there fields between or woodlands between? Are there proposed solutions to prevent the Home Inc. Property from being affected as much as possible if this thing went through? So I'd just love to hear from Mr. O'Rourke on that score, please.
Sean, do you have some feedback on that?
I do. We developed some kind of conceptual floor plans, but you know, we didn't develop those until probably into the fall, winter. We didn't have those when the first article was published. It was essentially just a color-coded map. So what we've tried to do is the architects acknowledged when we were doing this conceptual design that we had elderly abutting neighbors. So on the elementary school concept design that we did, we created essentially a solid wall on the backside of the school. No playgrounds, nothing that was be a noise generator. We kept all the parking and facilities on the opposite sides by Guile Road, again, to acknowledging that we have elderly neighbors. You know, part of the conceptual designs that we've presented so far, and they're in our previous presentations, are just that, they're conceptual. We put them there for discussion purposes as we met with people, including Home Inc. And anybody who's gone through a construction project knows it's an iterative process. You come up with something, you put it on paper, you sit down with everybody and you go through comments and you refine the design. And that's the type of, relationship we're looking to have with everybody on this project as we're going. So as far as, the initial concepts, we've acknowledged it. And then as we progress, we would definitely be incorporating all of those concerns. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Erin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's my recollection from the last meeting that we were holding this meeting based on what the Conservation Committee voted on. And it's my understanding that they voted 6-1 for it to be approved for this to happen. It's also my understanding that John Kiernan from the Conservation Committee is now here this evening. And I would like to request, Mr. Chair, that we have him speak, since that's the reason why we have called ourselves back together, was to hear how the Conservation Committee was going to vote. So thank you.
Absolutely. I was not aware. I can't see who everybody is. But if he's here, John, we would be very happy to hear what you have to say about this and to share more about the 6-1 vote, because that certainly influences the thoughts of many of our members. So you have the floor. You have 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. I won't need 7 minutes, I don't think, but I'll certainly respond to questions. If I can sort of encapsulate the factors that were considered by the Conservation Commission, I can start with the proposition that the original proposed land swap was actually about 10 acres in exchange for 6.8. Now I'm going to approximate some of the acreages, but the Guile Road piece is about 6.8 acres. And the original proposal was that we would receive about 7 acres on Randolph Avenue, which is primarily uplands, although it does have one section of wetlands next to Randolph Avenue. And then the Herrick Drive section is about 3 acres, which is primarily wet, but not entirely wet. And we went back to the sort of the negotiating table and said we would like to get more land in exchange for the 6.8. And then I guess the Park Commission and the Select Board and those on the School Building Committee suggested that we add the land on the other side of Guile Road. And when I say the other side, it would be the side of Guile Road between the roadway and Pine Tree Brook. So we picked up another 6 acres there. Again, I told you I'm approximating because it comes out to about 15 acres in exchange for 6.8. And the reason that we were impressed with that is because we were looking for net gain to the Conservation Commission and to the values that we protect. So we're looking at open space and we're looking at the resource value of the land. And the land that is on the, I guess, the north side of Guile Road, that approximately 7 acres there, 6 acres, is very important to us. I mean, it does have wetland values. It's part of the 200-foot jurisdictional zone for a perennial stream, which Pine Tree Brook is. And those are very, very important resource areas to us. And I'm sure somebody's going to say, and we discussed the fact that it's already protected, and that's true. We're putting an extra layer of protection by the ownership of the Conservation Commission to that which we already protect under the jurisdiction. And certainly the land goes beyond that which is jurisdictional to us. Because keep in mind, one of the points that was made at several meetings that we had is that there are 2 interests that the Conservation Commission has. One is the ownership that we're the deeded owner of the land, and the other one is separate and distinct, and that is that which is jurisdictional. That's an important point to observe, because the land that's being swapped, or that we voted to swap, is upland. That's true, but there are also jurisdictional sites there. Some of it is off-site on the Home Inc. side of the property line, But nevertheless, we have jurisdiction within 100 feet of the wetland delineated areas. And we did have at the site walk on March 26th, a chance to walk that land and look at where those jurisdictional lines are. So that we will nevertheless keep jurisdiction over the proposed site. We don't lose jurisdiction simply by giving away the deeded ownership. So again, to sum up, we're looking at a receipt of about 15 acres in exchange for 6.8 acres. And we looked at that as a net gain to the Conservation Commission and to the natural resources that we are not just interested, but we are mandated to protect. So on the net gain, we said, looks like a good deal to us. And we also considered at the time that the Park Commission had voted unanimously, that same day actually, to convey that land to the Conservation Commission, that land, the Guile Road property. And we had also received a unanimous vote of the Select Board, and that would include not just the land at Guile Road, but the land at Randolph Avenue and the land at Herrick Drive. So we looked at it, and 6 out of 7 of us said, sounds like a good deal to us. And certainly we're not unmindful of the fact that this is for a good public purpose. So that was the basis of our vote. That was the rationale for our vote. And that was our conclusion.
Questions for Mr. Kiernan? From the membership. Scott, you have the floor.
No, what continually seems to come up with the rabbit hole here is emotional decisions as opposed to factual decisions. And I love that you think that emotionally it sounds like a good deal, 15 acres for 6, but has there been a land valuation done on those 15 acres versus the 6 acres?
Well, we considered that, and that was one of the questions that was brought to us, certainly by members of the public and members of the commission. So the answer is yes, we did consider it. It is difficult to compare apples and oranges somewhat, because if the land is less desirable from a conservation perspective, it goes up in terms of fair market value because of its development potential. So that would have a higher fair market value. But we're comparing that to the valuation on the conservation side, which may drive down the fair market value because it's not buildable. So it's a little bit of an apples and oranges. And in order to kind of reconcile that, the importance of the different amount of land, the 15 versus the 6, becomes very, very important to us. Because it is difficult to come up with a single figure to compare that because of the different approaches, one being the developmental land and the other one being the conservation land.
Okay.
I'm not sure that answers your question.
No, it did not answer my question. It did not answer my question. My question was not whether you considered evaluation, it was whether evaluation was done. And the bottom line is that it has not been done. There has not been evaluation done, and I think it's been avoided for a purpose. And you cannot tell me that land that's already protected has any value to the land swap. 0. You're trying to preserve conservation land, and it's already protected, and it's not an added benefit just to set the rationality here straight that you've got a double protection on land that's already protected. I've been in front of the Conservation Commission, and it's been ridiculous many times. And I wasn't even doing any excavation, and they just they had these little nitpick things. I watched them turn down an Eagle Scouts conservation project once because he wanted to put a water bar in. So
Scott,
my point is, don't avoid the question. Don't avoid the question. Has there been evaluation, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, this tone does not suit well for our Warrant
Aaron,
committee.
that's enough.
I'm sorry.
Aaron, I've had enough of you interrupting.
Please, let's.
You're out of
Chair,
order.
This
You're
is
out of
not,
order, Aaron.
I'm going to rule everybody out of order in about 30 seconds. Okay.
I'm not.
This, if I say you are, I beg your pardon. This meeting will remain civil. We will keep our tone. We are neighbors. We don't have to agree.
No, we don't, Mr. Chair, but you said that there was a tone that we had to keep, and you sent us a list of rules that we had to follow that had to do with tone.
I am in the process of enforcing it if the member will permit me kindly. We are going to interact civilly and maintain focus on what we are doing. The issue here is not an Eagle Scout project. The issue here is the Conservation Commission's response and recommendation. That's what we're talking about. So let's get back to message. Mr. Kiernan, was a valuation done?
We did not have a valuation done by an outside consultant or land valuer. And one of the reasons that we did not is that there are two ways to value land. One is for the conservation value, and we think we're in a position to do that ourselves. The other one is development value from a development perspective. We did not have that done. You are correct, sir.
Is it possible for this to be done sometime soon?
Yes and no. It's possible to have, I'll take an example. If we were to value the land by a single land evaluator and say, what's the fair market value of 3 acres on Herrick Drive? Most of it is wet, and I can tell you that the market value is going to be down because no developer would be able to build on it. If we talk about the value of the land at Randolph Avenue, that's going to be extremely high because it is buildable. And for those that would ask further questions about is it really buildable, look across the street at 7-Eleven, where we have a 40B project with 90 units going out. That has tremendous value. Look down the street on the same side of Randolph Avenue, where there is a second 40B project at 728 Randolph Avenue. So if you brought in a land valuation expert, they say, oh, sure, that's worth a lot of money because a developer would be willing to pay a very high market value for that. So it's going to go up and down as to, on the open market, what is somebody going to spend on it? It depends. The same thing is true with respect to the Guile Road property. Much of that could not be built upon. Some of it could be built upon. That which would be buildable would have a high market value. That which is wetlands would not.
I think for our purposes, though, specifically, I think we're all aware that there are values that are higher, something that isn't underwater, obviously. But I think having dollars and cents attached to it would, I think, help. Certainly will help the town meeting because that is ultimately their decision. What we are doing now is vetting the information to be sure that we have the proper tools at our discretion to make that recommendation. And I think what I have heard from not just Scott Johnson and a couple of other members is that having that financial piece, what is the value of these properties? Are we looking at something that's like to like, would be helpful to us. And I think that is something that may factor into our consideration and recommendation going forward. I'm going to move on a little bit. Oh, Henny, your hand has been up for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all the members of town who are presenting here. So there are a couple of things that I wanted to raise, and I agree with the question about what was just shared. I do think it's very significant that the Conservation Commission did assess all these things. They are the experts in this. At some point, we have to decide whether we trust the work of our committees, the other committees that are doing it just as they trust our work. I want to ask us to trust their work. They may not have done everything, and we can raise our questions, but at the end of the day, if we don't have the data and we need to make a vote, we have to choose to either trust them or not trust them. That's one point. The second point is, if I'm very sympathetic to the Home Inc. Folks and to anything that happens where you feel like you didn't get a fair shake. And I listened clearly as you were talking to different people. And all of you said, you know, you understand the needs of the school. We all understand the needs of the school. You know, as I'm looking at this, as I've looked at all the elections that have been happening, the one thing everyone wants is better schools in this town. And just what you said, Mr. Chair, about being neighbors is very important. We all agree on that fundamental point. And the question is, can a different place be found for it? It seems that the grievance is not with the question of whether the land or this or that. The grievance is that there was mistruths or half-truths and the deal was changed and the lawyer flipped. And I think those are all legitimate grievances. Those are all legitimate things that should be addressed and should be considered. But they don't get to the fundamental question of the land swap, right? And I think if that happened, there should be an apology. There should be, and I understand the point, and we don't want to reward the wrong behavior. But this school committee has put in so much time, and maybe they went about it some the wrong way, and they should be held accountable for that. The question is, we've got full schools today. I want to bring us back to, and are we going to do something about it, or are we not? People in this town are working for it. If we are serious about getting the schools back in a position where we can be a leading school, we have to make a decision about a new school, and we can't kick the can down the road. I want to emphasize and ask our membership, just as our other committees trust us, to us, at least give them the benefit of the doubt, the other committees, that they've done the best that they could to enable us to be able to vote. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Chair.
I think that you raised some very good points. The issue that we're talking about here is the land swap and the factors that go into the land swap. Was there duplicity that has entered into the process? I can't say. I've heard from many sides, both in this meeting and elsewhere. I can't say that I suspect bad faith because I just don't have enough data. But our job right now, as the Warrant Committee, is to make a recommendation. Right now, there is no recommendation to the town meeting regarding this land swap and the merits of it for the construction. What has made sense to me is the idea that was brought up earlier is, and we cannot change the article, but we can put it in our opinion. Certainly the comment that we raise is that if we do recommend this going forward, excuse me, to put a clause potentially that if it is not used for a school, that it could revert to the Conservation Commission. What does anybody think of that? I'm talking to the membership. Also, members of the public who have not requested to speak directly may not be recognized. I just want you to know, if you're hanging around waiting to be recognized, if you have not contacted the chair earlier, it is not necessarily possible that you will be recognized, and your time to speak to this may be best used at town meeting, but that remains to be seen. Let's see, members, who was Susanna, I think I saw your hand first.
Yeah, I'm respectful of Scott's concern about the land value. I think it's really important. I'm not certain it's really within the purview of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission has made their determination in terms of the conservation land, basically, right? I'm concerned that if we wait for an estimate of the value of the land, which both Mr. O'Rourke and now Mr. Kiernan have told us is completely dependent on whether it's retained as conservation land or whether it's sold as buildable land. So that sounds like it could have a vast fluctuation. Then we're not going to be having a vote on this anytime soon. So I think that's concerning. I think, Oheni's point that, we could drag this out for the next 150 years is also true. So I think, I don't know procedurally. I mean, is there information? I guess I would like to hear, is there specific information that members feel like they need to get? Because Steve is right. We did ask to hear from the Conservation Commission after their vote. We've heard from the Conservation Commission after their vote. I appreciate their insight on conservation, but frankly, I don't feel held to their vote any more than I feel held to the select board's vote. We make our own decisions as to what to recommend to town meeting. So, I mean, that has its value in terms of their expertise in conservation. Is there specific information that our members need in order to move forward with the vote, because I think one way or the other, we need to make some kind of decision.
Okay, let's see, Christine.
Hi, George. I just wanted to issue my support for your notion that we have that we consider that clause to revert the land of the business.
I'm sorry, what was that? You came across muffled.
Oh, sorry. I agree with your notion that we should have a consideration to revert the land should this school not move forward.
Okay, let's see, Erin, I'm sorry I missed you.
Oh, Mr. Chair, it's totally fine. I just wanted to say that I agree with Susanna on this, on that we had asked for the Conservation Committee's vote. We've received it. I'm curious, and I need to obviously learn this, but is the Conservation Committee appointed? And if so, who are they appointed by?
John, do you have an answer for that? I don't know the answer to that.
I do. I didn't know if I was recognized.
Yes,
They're
you are.
They're appointed by the select board.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, how many boards have voted on this at this point in time? And are they elected or appointed?
We have the Conservation Commission, which is voted, the Select Board, which is elected, and I think that's it.
Okay. I just want to say that I think your idea of putting in that caveat that if it's not used for a school, that it reverts back is one that should alleviate a lot of concerns. So I too agree with that that caveat and think it's really thought out well. So thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, this is good. Emily, please, you have the floor. And then Steve.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And sorry, recovering from the latest cold. Thank you to everyone for sharing today. It's I think like many people have said, it's a tough vote. It's not easy. And I understand the concerns, but I also agree that that idea of that revert clause seems to be a great idea and hopefully alleviate some of those concerns. And I appreciate hearing from the Conservation Commission today as well, because I do think many of us expressed that interest in hearing after that vote. So for me, that was information that was helpful. So I just wanted to share that and add my support to the idea of the revert clause.
Okay, let's see. Steve, you had your hand up next.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a quick question. So we voted 3 times on this already. Are we obligated to vote again?
Well, we have we have to take a vote to reopen, which is the next step as soon as we're finished hearing all the things that we need to hear. And then if we take the vote, and depending on how it comes out, we can construct our comment appropriately.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Who is next? I'm trying to see here. Oh, Kathy, please. Then Scott.
I would also agree with the revert clause. I'm just really stuck on that federal participation thing. So is it possible that Kevin Freitag can weigh in on that before May 16th?
I think it is possible, certainly. We have to, I think if we're waiting for that, we're going to have to postpone what we do tonight, too.
I guess otherwise we vote and it goes, before the town and the town can decide. But then if we could decide that we want to do this, and then if it goes to the state, I guess someone there has to look at this and review this. And is it going to get kicked back if that's not?
I think there are going to be many reviews. I think there are several reviews that still have to happen. I still think so. But to answer your question, if we get Kevin to render an opinion on this, again, it delays what we have to do. And if that's the sense of the committee, I'm happy to do that because we do have a little time because this is going to be a green sheet. But I think the issue for us is determining how we want to proceed and do we have enough information and factors to consider at this point.
Did you just turn off the ability for people to chat on this issue that we're talking about? I just saw that happen.
I'm sorry, sir. If you have not asked to speak,
I
this
don't
is not-
care. I'm asking that we're chatting. We're talking in the
Well,
background.
the chat is
But
part
you
of the
just, you just shut the chat off because you didn't
chat.
like what was being
I
said. Is
shut.
that true?
I beg your pardon. You're interrupting the meeting, sir. This is not a meeting that is like others. You are here to observe, and unless you have requested to speak to the committee, I don't necessarily. We're not obliged to recognize you, and that goes for chat also.
Well, we're talking about chatting in the background. We're not
Chatting in the background
anything.
is part of the legal legally part of the minutes of the meeting as well. And I think
We're not allowed to discuss what's going on.
you can discuss what's going on, but not in the meeting. You can discuss whatever you
We're
like.
not in the meeting. We're in a
That's
chat
right.
in the background that nobody's watching.
I'm going to rule you out of order, sir. You have interrupted the meeting. Kathy, you were saying something?
You're ruling me out of order. Okay. I rule you out of order. This is not correct. You should not do this.
Mr.
This
Chair,
is a
I believe
public
Lane
hearing.
can mute him. Mr. Chair, I believe Lane can mute people of the public that have not been recognized by you.
Oh, that may have happened. I haven't muted
No, I
anybody.
think she can. No, I think she can right now.
Thank you,
Oh.
Erin.
You're welcome. Sorry.
Okay. Where were we? Kathy, have you finished?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm fine.
Let's see. Scott, you have the floor.
I like the revert clause if this was to move forward, but I fear that the revert clause is more moving this forward without enough information, unless that's the problem here. And this land, whether we like it or not, is gonna have to be valued if it goes through the Chapter 97 process. They're gonna ask for that value. So for us to vote without evaluation to recommend this it's opening the town up to a lot of financial expense that could very well fail in court. And I don't want people to be mistaken to vote yes for this because it's got a revert clause into it that'll go back to conservation. And additionally, there's 145 people who are affected by this that claim, and I'm sure they're going to probably fight too, and they're going to come forward. And this is a can of worms unless we do this totally correctly. And that's why I was being so rough about, has it been valued or not? And you can say conservation land is valued one way and buildable land is valued another way. The bottom line is, this is buildable land that we're swapping. And I think any lawyer worth half of the salt could make a very good argument that already protected land is not an exchange of value for valuable buildable land. And it's not about has nothing to do with that we need a school. You don't make expedient decisions because you need a school the wrong way in an unprincipled manner. You have to stick to the rules. And that's what I'm thinking here.
Let's see. Next is JJ. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking to Scott's point, I'd love to hear from the Conservation Commissioner about, is the land on Randolph Avenue that he said was very valuable from a development standpoint, is that land currently protected or is it buildable?
Mr. Chair, should I respond?
Please.
Certainly. Yes, it is buildable. Are there protections? There are some in terms of the wildlife habitat. In that same area, there are some endangered species habitat areas, but that hasn't prevented building projects. As an example, the same area is where the town was going to put up the wind turbine. I don't know, 8 or 10 years ago. That was fairly controversial, and it resulted in a court fight with the Quarry Hills folks. But the answer to your question is yes, it is buildable. There are certain requirements and performance standards that have to be met. Yes, indeed. And currently, that same area of land is before the, I think it's teed up to be before the ZBA at 728 Randolph Avenue. That's the same land. It's the same land area, and it would be subject to the same performance standards for buildings. But in answer to your question, is it buildable? Yes, it is.
Okay.
So just a follow-up question really quickly. I know you haven't done you're not an appraiser and you haven't done a development appraisal, but that land, in your opinion, is very valuable. Like, for example, I live near Randolph Avenue. I know there's a 40B with however many units are going up there. The same thing could happen on that land, right? And if that can happen there, can that also happen on the school land right now or no?
No, I mean the school land currently is owned by the Conservation Commission.
Okay, so there's the Randolph Avenue lands, from my understanding of what you're saying, and we don't have an appraiser here, but it's very commercially valuable. And development-wise, I would think from what you're saying, that land is more valuable than the school land in and of itself.
Well, there are a lot of moving parts here. There are 7 acres of buildable land that, if conveyed to the Conservation Commission, would no longer be buildable. That's one of the problems with valuing it. If you
No,
bring
I
an
understand,
appraisal-
but we are trying to come to a conclusion right now because people want to know. I trust your judgment on conservation. We're trading 6 acres for 15 acres, and you are a conservation expert, and you've told me that 15 acres is more valuable conservation-wise. Now I'm trying to get to the question of development-wise, is that 15 acres more valuable? And what I am wondering is that one parcel on Randolph Avenue more valuable than the land in the school? And we are not appraisers, I understand that, but if you're telling me you can build a 40B project on that Randolph Avenue property, that is very valuable land, is it not?
It is indeed.
There you go.
And that was actually my point. That if you value it from a buildable perspective, it has a
very
high
valuable
dollar.
developmentally, commercially valuable land.
Right. But if it were conveyed to us, it would no longer be buildable, and
Yes,
therefore
I get it.
wouldn't have
I get
as
it.
much of a fair market value.
Thank you.
It would drop precipitously.
Thank you.
Okay, so we still have a few people who want to speak. I would like to move the conversation forward and ask the members to continue pursuing this, but try to keep to whether or not we are interested in opening this up for another vote, and then what that vote would be. So let's move our conversation towards that. Let's see. I saw Kristen's hand up next.
Oh, that's fine. If we're going to move towards that discussion, that's fine.
No, if you have,
No, I mean, I was just going to say, I think the federal participation is something that sticks out, that I would kind of like to have that loop closed. And then also, I would hope that we could have a clause in there that would refer back to conservation land if not used for
Okay.
school.
Mr. Jackson's been doing a dance for us over here. I think he has something to say about that. So if you have something to add that's germane to the conversation, you're welcome to do so now, briefly.
I will make it very brief. The federal participation is recorded in the town documents. The town records of 1980 specifically record a reimbursement from the federal government of $26,333 to the town for the purchase of the land property. Mr. Freitag was asked about that. He said he had no idea, so it was never considered. On the park department land, according to Article 97, the park department land going to Conservation Commission is a taking and requires over 6 acres of replacement land to the park department, which was never addressed by the committee. The change or taking includes the change of control or use of any right or interest in Article 97 land. So change from park to Conservation Commission is a change of use, which requires Article 97. 2 other very quick points. Fair market value is not the measure that needs to be applied here, because there's also the ecosystem values where there has been no attempt in the Conservation Commission, as much as I think John Kiernan is the best Concom chairman we've ever had. The idea of not having a way to value the ecosystem values of those parcels is not legitimate. And also the Randolph Avenue land, in addition to the restrictions by the wetland values, which Chairman Kiernan acknowledges, earlier was mentioned that that's protected habitat. Where the article, where the 40B projects are proposed are the other side of the road and are very different consideration and not protected habitat by the state. So they're very different situations. I don't think you can compare them. And the town has not addressed the issue of finding 6.5 acres to give to the park department in exchange for their 6 acres of land. And that is definitely required by the state. And the federal participation eliminates the use of that land, of the school parcel land, from use for this project. Thank you. And I'll keep my mouth shut now.
No, thank you very much. Your information has been very interesting. We appreciate your coming and sharing. Let's see. So we have Susanna, Kristen, O'Henny, and Aaron. Susanna, I think I saw your hand first. Why don't you go ahead?
I'll be super brief. I just have to echo O'Henny's comment that at some point we need to trust the experts that have been elected or appointed to fill these roles. This committee has worked for years. The suggestion that they've failed to consider options is, at some point it just becomes insulting and a little bit outrageous. They have worked exhaustively, and I think we have, they are experts in more, they know more about this than any of us ever will. And I think we have to give them the consideration and the respect of assuming that they did their due diligence. So I understand that members have questions. I think the town meeting will have questions, but from my perspective, I would call the question and recommend that the committee takes a vote.
Okay, before we do this, O'Henny, you have something to add, and then Aaron, you'll be recognized, and perhaps then we can move along. O'Henny, are you still here? Do we lose you?
I am. After what after what the eloquent, my eloquent member of the council has just spoken about me, I'll follow my father's advice and just keep quiet for once.
Let's see. Aaron, you were next. Please.
Yes, I am next. Since we are here this evening because we requested the vote from the Conservation Committee, I am moving that we open the vote for reconsideration. I believe that's the only motion I need to make right now.
Okay, that's exactly right.
Mr. Chairman, my hand is raised. My hand is raised.
We have a motion on the table. Is this speaking to the motion, Scott?
My hand was raised when the motion was made. My hand was raised when the motion was made.
Well, the motion was raised and she was ahead of you. I'm just following.
Okay. I don't know the procedure. Is that the procedure?
No, the motion was made. Her hand was before you. That's why I recognized her. The motion's made. Are you addressing the motion?
No, I'm not addressing the motion.
Okay, hang on a second though. Let's address this and get the exact article number, Lynn, for this. And then Scott, I will recognize you once we go through this. Okay, it's Article 34, which is up in front of us. We have a motion on the floor to reopen our vote, to reconsider our vote. Do we have a second for that?
I second.
Okay, conversation about that. Scott, do you have something to say?
About reopening the vote?
Yes.
I don't really know what can I say and what can I say?
Well, we're reopening the vote. If you're in favor of it, that's great. If you're not, then that's fine too. But if it reopens, then we'll have the vote again, and then we'll have the discussion about what we want to vote on or how we want to vote. So this is strictly for the reconsideration. The vote has been made. The motion's been made to reconsider and reopen our vote. And that's where we are now. It's been made and seconded. And if there's any conversation about that, we can proceed with it. Otherwise, we'll go directly to a vote.
I wanted to say that there are other points that need to be taken into consideration. Namely the legal process, the 145 residents that are abutters, and the fact that the valuation, there is going to be, I don't understand why we're not evaluating this before we vote. Until we know the valuation, we really can't vote on this.
Well, we can vote to reopen to have a vote on it, and that's what we're doing now.
Okay.
Okay, that's what we're doing now. Your concerns, very valid, absolutely worth talking about, will be the next step once we have a motion of how we want to vote. Okay. So that's the process. That's the process. I'm not trying to cut anybody off or subvert anything. The issue here is just to follow the procedure appropriately. So motion has been made to reconsider the vote for Article 34, and it's been seconded. If there's any further discussion, speak now.
Can we take all the members' hands down before we start this vote?
Oh, that's probably a good idea. Those of you who have your hands up, please take them down so we can take this vote. So I'm not confused because I'm slow. I just need some visuals here, and it's hard enough when we're person. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this what we're voting on? Is it the article as is, or is it the article with the reversion clause in it?
No, we're just opening. We're reconsidering our vote. The clause is that's part of the comment.
I got it.
Excuse me. If there's no further discussion, Lynn, would you please take the roll on the vote to reconsider the vote on Article 34?
Sure, George.
Yes.
Steve.
No.
Emily.
Yes.
Erin.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
JJ.
Yes.
Susanna.
Yes.
Christine.
Yes.
Scott.
No.
Kathy.
Yes.
Dave.
Abstain.
Kristen.
Abstain.
Muhammad.
Yes.
Oh, Henny.
Yes.
John.
Includes myself.
Okay.
So that gives us 10 yays, 2 nays, 2 abstain, 1 recuse.
Okay, so we have the opportunity now to reconsider our vote with the information that we received. So at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 34 to the town meeting. Do we have a motion for that?
Mr. Chair, my hand's up. I was going to make that motion. I turned my camera off because you can't see me when I have my hand up when I have my camera on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's good because I can't.
But I'm making the motion to I'm sorry. It's been a really long couple days. Can you repeat what you just said, Mr. Chair, so that I can move on that?
Do I have the chair will entertain a motion to recommend Article 34 to the town meeting?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Now, Scott, you wanted to bring up some points.
Yeah. First of all, does this motion have the reversion in it? Are we voting with that?
No.
It's gonna...
No, it does not have the reversion in it because we can't change the article. We have to vote it as is.
That's what I figured.
What we can say is if we do recommend it, we recommend it and strongly urge the town meeting to require this. We can't tell them what to do. We can urge it, or we can vote against it, and we can recommend that the town meeting vote against it. It's kind of, and put that in the comment too, that if they choose to override our recommendation, we recommend that they put this reverter clause in, should it not be used for school. That's how I think we should handle it.
I prefer that over voting in favor of it. I mean, you're just opening a door if it's not ready. Once again, it's not ready for prime time. If we want a reversion, I think all of us want that clause.
Well, here's the question though. We still have a couple of weeks. Is it likely that we're going to get information with respect to the financial valuation, the actual monetary value of this real estate in that period of time? I don't know. I can't answer that question. I think that's an open question and it's a worthwhile question to ask. JJ, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think, you know, I guess I'm talking to you, Scott, about just you keep asking about the valuation, and I think it's a valid point, but I'm putting on my financial CPA hat, and I don't know who to believe. Actually, I do know who I trust, I guess, is the Conservation Commissioner versus, I forget the name of the gentleman, but he was saying that that Randolph Avenue lot is not buildable. But the Conservation Commissioner clearly said that it was buildable and it could be used for 40B housing as a developer for 90 units, and the school land cannot. I just know from my head, very common sense. That land is more valuable commercially than the school lands. So I don't understand why we need an appraiser to come in and tell us that to take this vote.
Because that's usually how you do stuff. And
yeah, but I'm asking you to use
like
your common sense.
It's
here.
like, well, there is common sense involved here, and he also did say, also that there's protected species on that land. There's who knows how long.
Scott, real quick.
It
is relevant, but Scott, listen, Scott, 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he was the Conservation Commissioner, and he spoke to the conservation elements, and he's an expert in that area. So I believe him there. And then when it comes to development, he said that lot on Randolph Avenue is developable, and it is commercially so much more valuable than that school lot. Just common sense wise. I don't need an appraiser to come in and tell me that.
Okay.
There may be things an appraiser would see about that land that might contradict the conservation value of the land.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. He's saying
you put it right exactly there. We don't have enough information.
No, we do. He's told us it's buildable. He has told us it's buildable.
It's a question of, I think the issue is
from a conservation perspective, possibly.
No, from a conservation perspective, he says the 15 acres is more valuable in his mind. And he also stated that land on Randolph Avenue is buildable and the school land is not. And trading it, you wanted 2 valuations, and I'm giving you the second valuation. I'm giving you the commercial valuation, not through an appraiser, but through common sense, saying land that is buildable on Randolph Avenue, where you can put 40B, a lot of units, is more valuable than school land, right where it is. It is.
You're still you're gonna have to. Why hasn't the valuation been done? That's the question. Why hasn't it been done? And you're gonna have it. The court is not gonna take 97. The Chapter 97 people are not gonna take it without a value.
So it will get done. So it will get done. But I can.
That's what you say. That's all.
Valuable.
That's all hearsay.
I can tell you it's going to be more valuable.
Hang on.
Everything you're saying, you're calling common sense is hearsay.
No, it's not. It's buildable.
It's not evidentiary.
I wish I had a gavel that I could bang right now.
Hang it now. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, you both raised very good points. Okay, you're both raising very good points. What I can say though is, even if we don't have a valuation, I think that we can influence this by putting in our recommendation, if said property cannot be used for the building of a school, the property should be returned to the conservation land, the jurisdiction of the conservation region, or worded some way. And that would, I think, mollify some of the concerns if this doesn't actually happen. So, Steve, your hand is up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. So just one comment. We've come this far and all the committees have done so much work to get us this far. Why not just do the last 3 yards and do it right and have the land appraised and make sure we're right. I don't think Mr. Kiernan is an expert on land appraisal. There's people that do that for a living that are certified to do that or licensed to do that. I don't understand. We're talking about spending $60 million going forward, and who knows how many lawsuits we're going to have because we're not doing it right. Just do it right.
Okay, that's and what would doing it right would we require or would ask the town meeting to require evaluation? I'm just thinking mechanically how to do that. That's something we have to think about. Erin, your hand was up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple things I wanted to say. One is it's yet another thing that we are asking that be done. It seems really interesting to me that this wasn't brought up the last time we had a conversation. In fact, it wasn't even hinted upon the last time we had multiple discussions about this. So now here we are with another thing that we have to do for a vote to happen. I would like to remind many members that were on this committee that they voted when we were doing the land issue with the Fire Building Commission. We had no idea what it was going to cost us for that land that we bought. And they all voted in favor of that without any information about what the actual sale would be. And so I would just like to remind the members that while we are sitting here debating this over the schools, which is another public service to our town, that they have taken votes on this regarding not really knowing the full picture of something. So what we're voting on right now is specifically because we asked for the Conservation Commission's vote. We have that. Not another issue is needed for us to evaluate this. JJ is 100% right. It is common sense. And so that is all I have to say, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. The next hand up, I think, was Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, Aaron just highlighted what I wanted to say. This was pushed out because of the Conservation Committee vote that we needed. We will keep getting different things every time we come to a vote. Everybody is not going to be happy. Everybody's going to want to see additional information. And as Aaron said and JJ said, common sense tells you that this land is more valuable. Thank you very much.
Let's see. Scott, your hand was up next. And then Steve.
First of all, the land for the firehouse was a land for purchase, not a swap. This land has to go through a court process, and it's a land swap. It's a very, very different. It was irrelevant what happened there as a precedent for this land. The court process is coming. We're going to have to go through, or whatever process it is we have to go through. It's going to be a fortune to do it. Why can't we? There's 145 residents that are very abutters that are very, very unhappy about this. There's a matter of principle here. There were covenants on the land based on the sale as to what it was, the stipulations for what the sale was going to be. And why can't we send this back? Like Steve said, do it right, send it back and tell them, look, give us the revision rather than leaving it in the gray where it's all can be manipulated. Give them we think there should be a reversion clause and we want to see the appraisal and this is what it costs and therefore we recommend it or we don't recommend it. But I mean, it's just a can of worms. It's just a way of pushing this through is what it's like. It just because
right. Back up 2 seconds. The reversion clause is something I think we may have reached a consensus on if I'm reading everybody's nodding and conversations that we've had to this. I understand that, and I think that's something that would be acceptable to many of the members. What you have raised about additional valuation and that sort of thing, talk to us a little bit about how you think that mechanically would work before we move on. Would that become part of a recommendation? Because we can change the recommendation and we can add whatever we want, really. We can't change the article, but we can't make recommendation.
Can we vote to send this back to the committee with recommendations that this is what we want to see?
We could vote to send it back to the committee excuse me, to revert to the committee.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure what that would, I'm not quite sure what
Mr.
that
Chair, I'm not sure that we can, and Scott, I'm not interrupting, but I honestly don't know that we can because
Yeah,
it's already printed in the warrant. And so I'm not with no recommendation, Mr. Chair. So I'm
Well,
not sure if we, unless we did a green sheet, is that
we-
what you're
we-
saying, to send
we
it back?
No, we have to do a green sheet for this. This is the easy part.
Right, but
Whatever-
what
That's
Scott's
why we have
saying.
flexibility. I'm
But
sorry?
what Scott's saying, I'm trying to be parliamentary here. And Scott, I'm really not interrupting. I'm just trying to figure out if what Scott's saying is to send it back to the committee. I don't know that that's possible within a green sheet. Is that?
I can't answer that either. If we can get hold of Kevin Freitag, he may be able.
We don't need to do that. And we don't, I think there's already a motion on the table right now. So I don't think we need to do that. I'm just trying to figure out what actually Scott was asking us to do. And if
Yeah.
it was possible.
Let's see if Kevin's available. Let's see if Kevin's available.
I guess the question is.
Oh, Mr. Chair, love late meetings. Sure, let's do that.
Well, we have to get this done. As I've said so often, we do what we have to do, right? And we're all in this together, and I'm just one vote. So the issue for us is, should we choose? We have a couple of decisions. First off, do we recommend it to town meeting for their adoption? And in our recommendation, which we can change, recommendation and opinion, we can put whatever we think is in order. And that's why I'm saying we should be judicious about that, but we do have some flexibility. I don't want to monopolize this. Mohammed, you're
Parliamentary, Mr. Chair, Kevin Freitag is here. I'm sorry,
good.
he is here. He's present at the meeting right now.
Oh,
It was just brought to my attention.
Yeah, Kevin, I thought you would be available, and I'm glad. Kevin, are you here?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm grateful for your time. Two questions. First off, we're taking a vote on we reopened the vote on Article 34. We're taking a vote now. We're having discussion concerning adding a reverter clause should the land that we're talking about swapping not be used for a school, recommending that it be returned to the Conservation Commission. First off, is that possible? Secondly, should the committee choose, send this back to its proposing committee?
So regarding the first piece, the reverter piece, I think that it's important to keep in mind here that this is a swap.
Yeah.
And so certain parcels are going into conservation and certain parcels are going out. And I guess my question to you is it, if the legislature doesn't approve the removal of the conservation land from the protections of Article 97, is the idea that the entire swap is undone? Or is it simply that the conservation parcel stays in conservation and then everything else that got put into conservation also stays in conservation? Because their land is going in two different directions in this article.
Right.
So are you talking about unwinding the whole thing or just unwinding the conservation piece?
We haven't gotten to that point. We're specifically concerned about the land, particularly as it abuts homemade and that particular parcel. So the mechanics of what would be unwound, we still leave up in the air.
But Mr. Chair, what Kevin just said is really important to note. And I'm a parliamentary, whatever you want me to
That's all right.
say.
Go ahead.
He's saying that it has to go to the legislature
Yes.
before it goes to any court. So everybody that's talking about court and Article 97, that can all be put on a back burner, right, Mr. Freitag? Because it has to go through the legislature first.
That's right. The portion of the article that there is a portion of this article which asks the select board and authorizes them to ask the legislature to approve the removal of the land from the protections of Article 97. So that final removal can't happen unless and until the legislature acts.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
All the more reason to have our ducks in a row before we send this out, right?
I don't disagree. That is why what we're trying to do now. Okay, that helps. So next part of the question is, can we send it back to its sponsoring body?
Yes.
With a green sheet.
Or a motion to amend your recommendation at town meeting. You could do it before in a green sheet, or you could do it at town meeting, in a motion. on the floor.
Okay. Well, excuse me, that opens up possibilities. So
There's
that-
currently a motion on the table, just so
There
we
is a mo-
remember. Thank you.
which we're discussing now. So let me see if I can go back to who is in let's see. Steve, I think your hand was next.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a quick comment to an earlier comment made by one of the members that the only reason we sent it back because we had not heard from the Conservation Commission. That's not true. In my heart, I know why I voted, and that was not the reason. I think Dave Humphreys made an excellent comment about what the intent of that land was, and so I had a number of issues. So don't paraphrase me or make me be you, because I know what I voted for.
Okay, Dave, your hand was next.
Don't hide.
Thank you. I'll be brief. You know, if I was lengthy, I probably wouldn't say much that I haven't said already. It was good presentations from everyone today.
Oh yeah.
You know, there were questions that I had, reservations that I had with regards to the swap that were answered by Mr. O'Rourke. But I think at the end of the day, you know, I'm gonna come back to one of the criteria that they look at in 97, and it's one of the ones that we look at, I think that we should look at, is this parcel. You know, what is this parcel? What were the express wishes of the individuals who donated or sold the parcel to the Commonwealth or to us as part of the Commonwealth? And we took on that responsibility from the Lamb sisters. And it's our heritage and it's our legacy. When that went to town meeting back on June 13th, 1978, it was Article 7. And it went through upon the Warrant Committee's recommendation at that time that the land be acquired for conservation purposes. And, you know, we're the Warrant Committee now. It was people like us who were sitting at that time and who made that commitment then. I think we need to reaffirm this commitment. You know, I think some of the sense that I got from listening to Home Inc. was, it's like that poem, this is how it ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Is that over time we chisel away, chisel away, chisel away, and chisel away until one day it's all gone. So I'm just gonna be a no. Thank you.
Kathy, you have the floor.
Just while Kevin was here, I was wondering if he could weigh in on that federal participation and any restrictions on that.
Kevin, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here.
The question was, when this land was purchased, there was federal subsidy that was used to make the acquisition through the town. And does that have bearing on the validity of this transfer at this point?
My understanding is that if there was, and I'm not aware of the specific funding, the federal funding that's involved, but my understanding was that if there was funding that was involved, that would be reflected in certain contracts that the state agencies, particularly the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, would have access to, and that those contracts could be amended to reflect this type of a transfer. In other words, the use of federal funds to acquire this land would not prohibit the type of swap that's being contemplated in this article.
Does that answer you, Kathy?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Henny, you have the floor.
Dave, you know, I want to thank you, Mr. Chair. Dave Humphreys, I love the way your mind works, and I love the way you always keep us faithful to the wishes of those who came before us. I think it's very important to consider. However, there are moments and times when we have to consider in today's context what the Lamb sisters would have wished, right? As you may know, many of the properties of this town have written into the deed that you cannot be sold to people of Irish descent or African descent or whatever it may be. We've had to challenge many of those because considering today's context, we can surely not honor that request. Ask any realtor, you'll see it in so many properties, right? And so people, you have to make a choice. As the house I own that may have been written to this deed, I have to choose, am I going to honor those wishes or not? I bring that forward because I think as the Warrant Committee, we have a responsibility to not only consider the wishes of those who were there, but the wishes of those who were there as they would be considered today in context of the time. The context of the time, once again, just regrounding us, is that we have searched high and low. We've all agreed we need to bring these schools back to a point they're going the wrong direction. We have an opportunity to do so. And in context of these times, I think, Dave, we have to say that the Lamb sisters, if it came down to no school or having a school or another 15 years of tearing, might have said, you know, maybe we can consider this. And I know you may not agree with that point, but I just respectfully ask that we consider that and ask that we move to a vote as soon as possible.
JJ, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to admit, you know, wishes of the Lamb sisters does weigh in my mind, and I was thinking hard about it. But then Mr. O'Rourke today presented the fact that it was sold. It wasn't gifted. I was under an impression that it was gifted. Not only that, the legal protections which the Lambs willingly entered into this contract stated after 30 years, those protections expired. Now, a gentleman came on the Zoom and said they do not expire because of federal money, but our town council has just come on and stated this federal money, if it did happen, does not affect those expirations. So, yes, the Lambs had a wish in 1978, but the legal contract that they signed, the law of the land at the time that they signed it, stated that those protections would expire in 30 years, in 2008. And we are well past that time, and we are doing the right thing from a conservation perspective by exchanging that land for more land, more valuable protected land, and from a development land perspective valuation. So in my mind, there is no reason to stop this vote from occurring right now. Not only that, if we're going to talk about facts, we have to talk about the fact that our children are in overcrowded schools and that our children deserve to have a school. And we have a school building committee that has spent 3 years. And on this call, various people have said they have not looked. And when it has been presented to Mr. O'Rourke, he has addressed each one of those statements with, yes, we have looked. We have done our homework. We have spent 3 years. Not only that, a member of this committee, Susanna Hegarty, has stated that she was on that committee for 2 years before that. And she also said they have done their homework. Besides the school building committee, the conservation committee has voted 6-1 to approve this. The select board has voted unanimously to approve this. And I am not saying we have to follow them to the letter of the law, but their expertise should inform our vote. And the time is now, because if we do not approve this now, the building of the school will be delayed another year. And who knows what is going to come about in another year. So I move that we vote and we approve for all those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, you have the floor.
These arguments, although emotional, speak of desperation. We can't imagine that what the Lamb sisters would say today. It's absolutely impossible that we could raise the dead and figure out what they would think they meant. We can only go with what was written. That's factual. The schools, by the way, I agree overcrowding is not a good thing, but the reason the Milton schools are not failing, they've been failing since before there was overcrowding, is not because of buildings. Buildings are not going to solve it. The reason the schools are failing, as pointed out in the strategic plan, is there's absolutely no focus on academics in the mission statements of the schools. So you raise kids up or scores up by getting the job done in the classrooms you have. So those two issues are not there, but I stand with the principle of this, and we need, once again, to not be expedient here, but to have our ducks in a row. I don't see why there's so much resistance to just going out and getting an appraisal and having everything right in a row so that we can go forward.
Thank you. Henny, your hand was up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm
sorry.
I didn't know if you had something more to say.
No, I wanted to clarify one thing that I forgot to clarify earlier. I wanted to apologize to the members of the public who are here. I was the one who was writing in the comment. I was doing also as a member of the Warrant Committee. And I think they mistook that for another member of the public writing in the comment. So I realized that argument happened while I was putting my kids down. So just please forgive me for starting the commentary writing. I was doing it as a member of Warrant Committee. So that was a misunderstanding caused by me.
Yeah. I counsel everybody, beware of what you put in the chats, because it is admissible. It is part of our record. And again, just be super careful about how you deal with these things. Susanna, you have the floor.
Yeah, just very quickly. Scott, I agree with you about the quality of the schools and the direction that the schools have gone in. And, I know that we're on the same page with regard to the need to address that. I have to say, though, that I don't see how an evaluation of this land is going to make any difference in that going forward. I'm concerned that we put this off once because we asked for more information. This was not among the information that we asked for. So putting it off again looks like an additional delay. I can understand that the land valuation may affect, that the result of a land valuation may affect the votes of some members on the committee. And there may be people who feel uncomfortable with voting in favor because we don't have that information. At some point, we've got to draw the line and take a vote one way or the other. I do feel the urgency of, moving forward with making a decision on the schools. And then the final, this is good. It's probably going to come out wrong. I want us to focus on our mission and our responsibility as the Warrant Committee. The intention of the Lamb sisters sounds to me like talking about the founders' intentions back when I was a first-year law student. It's really outside of our purview. Our purview is whether to recommend this to town meeting for a vote in favor or a vote against. It's not, I don't consider it my responsibility, and I'm sure this will come off as disrespectful, but it's not meant to be, to honor the wishes of the Lamb sisters in their sale of the land to the town of Milton. If there is a legal problem with this process, that is the responsibility of town council, who's already weighed in with his expert opinion, which I trust. And frankly, all due respect to Kevin, if he's wrong, that's his problem. That's something that needs to be dealt with down the road. Our responsibility as a committee is to recommend this. Let's keep in mind, we're coming at this from a fiscal perspective, and I can completely respect if there are members of this committee who disagree with this plan from a fiscal perspective. But I think we've gone a little bit far afield, and I am strongly opposed to delaying the process under the premise that the school building committee has failed to investigate all options, because again, I can personally guarantee that that's not the case. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Susanna, because you actually said something I was about ready to say, and I think we have to bring this back to what our responsibility is. We've talked about lots of things, but our responsibility right now is effectively to determine whether we have heard enough from the various opinions and committees and points of view to recommend this to the town meeting, because it's ultimately their decision. And everybody who has come to speak to us has the opportunity to speak to town meeting, and it is an open forum. It is actually a more open forum than what this committee is designed to do, because members of the public can come and speak again at request, and give their perspectives and their positions. What we are doing is saying to the town meeting, we have heard, if not every possible piece of information, enough information to determine that if we can put this before you and you make the decision. Because I guarantee that we're going to have a lot of discussion on this, and we're going to hear every blessed argument that we have heard in our hours of testimony. We're going to hear it again at the town meeting. So I am disposed actually I can't do this as chair, but to move forward and to curtail discussion if that is the wish of the membership, and just move to a vote as to how we think we should proceed, and then take it from there. Scott, your hand is up, and it was up anyway, so you're the next person.
You know, George, your point about dotting the about we're going to hear every argument from the town and it's going to go on. We have to dot the I's and cross the T's, and it will shorten that argument if in fact this is good. And this is all about finance. The Lamb sisters, it's all about cost, because this is going to be fought legally, okay? The Lamb sisters are going to be part of the financial thing because of the legal arguments. You know, any lawyer can tell you, oh, it can be done, but we all know that lawyers have 16 different angles on everything, and it's interpretation of the law. Yeah, the appraisal is going to be something they're going to ask for, and it's going to be a legal cost to us if we go forward and we don't have our ducks in a row.
But in that,
that's why I'm voting no. You know,
I would argue that the appraisal is something that will probably somebody will request at some point, and may occur or may not occur depending on what the disposition and how it goes at town meeting. So I don't disagree with any of your points. I'm just trying to find a way for us to be most effective and get this to the point where we can make a recommendation. JJ,
Mr. Chair, there's already a motion on the floor.
Yeah, I understand, but we're in the middle of the discussion, and we haven't moved beyond that. So we're trying to do that now. JJ, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I gave an impassioned speech, and I keep hearing the word emotional when it comes to arguments that I think is directed at me. So I would like to just address that and say the argument that I am making is factual. When we are talking about, as Susanna rightly pointed out, it's kind of like discussing the founder's intentions. But here we have a legal document signed by the Lambs, and we have no idea what their intention is except that legal document and the laws at the time. And what did the legal document say? It said, according to the rules, no structure, no regrading, and maintain the shrubs for the next 30 years. That is what it said. And that is what we have in front of us. That is a fact. So when I'm told that I am voting against the principles of Mrs. Lamb, I do not know that I am doing that, because that is the fact at the time. I would just like to point that out.
Thank you. Dave, you have the floor.
Thank you. And in the deed, just prior to those restrictions, there's the statement that this is in order to promote for the promotion and development of the natural resources and for the protection of the watershed resources of said town. Now, it's that clause which is in this deed, which is putting this solidly into 97. If that wasn't there and the other covenants lapsed after 30, we wouldn't have this. We probably already have a Tedeschi's there by now.
God.
Right? And so anyway, so the reason why I keep going back to the Lamb sisters is simply that's where it started. And as far as, like the intent and, Constitution and the law, ultimately, that's all we have. Because otherwise, we're just going to wake up every morning and decide that whatever my subjective narrative that I want to put on the world is now everyone else's objective truth. These things give us a guideline and a framework and a roadmap that we can follow in order to make very important decisions. At some point, it is a commonality that we still do have. We're all have the benefit of excellent educations, I believe, that we want to pass on to our children. And I've enjoyed this, actually. I hope that I haven't given offense to anyone. And if I have, I deeply apologize. Thank you.
I don't think anybody intends to be offensive. At least what this conversation, and for those of you who have not listened to our warrant committees before, I remember seeing something that really kind of upset me in one of the election circulars that came around that implied that the warrant committee and other committees did not reflect the diversity of thought in the town of Milton. I would say that is utterly false. I think this conversation reflects the differences of opinion and virtually every point of view that can possibly be brought forward, every demographic, every concern, every ethnic, every racial, whatever. This is exactly why we're doing what we do. And I think this is, it's long, but it's absolutely worth it. And for anyone to question the thoroughness of our discussion or the courage of our convictions hasn't followed our proceedings well enough at all. I think we're coming to the point. I just want to bring us back to what we're discussing. This is a land swap. We are putting more land into, again, consider this, we're putting more land into conservation, dry land, swampland. We're putting more land into conservation and devoting the existing piece of land that we're talking about swapping out to the benefit of the town, to the schools. I can't say what the initial implications that the Lambs had at the time. I do know that they needed the money, very honestly, because their house had burned down, and they were the classic story of the landed family that had that one asset left and no heirs, and so they sold the land and they used the money to live. So I mean, I hate to bring it back to the dirty little secret that everybody needs, to put food on the table. And they needed it at that point in time. I do remember that discussion that was whispered around town, but not spoken out loud. So anyway, with that having been said, Susanna, your hand is up.
Mr. Chairman, you had the advantage of your years over all of us. So your age is adding value here, and none of us can hope to keep up.
I just that's a compliment.
It absolutely is. So I just want to say, Dave, I couldn't agree with you more. I thoroughly enjoy this, the opportunity to engage with committed and intelligent citizens on issues that matter to us in the town. I just want to say again, in terms of the legal aspects, I'm a lawyer. I'm not an expert on any of these property issues. And I say that to point out that we have town council who is, and he's weighed in and he's weighed in on our obligations as a town. And I will trust his judgment until it's proven wrong, at which time we would have to make a different plan as a town. I'll give you a brief example, and I applaud the desire to be true to the intentions of the Lambs. But again, I personally, I don't believe that trumps our obligations to our current crop of children. So the language of the deeds, maybe it's not a deed, but the language says, it's intended to nurture the natural resources of Milton. So here's a funny little legal example. I could go to court and I could argue that the children are among the natural resources of Milton, right? So building a school on the property could arguably validify the intentions of the Lambs in selling that property. So I think I mentioned this not to engage in an argument over verbiage, but to say that I think at some point we have to trust town council. That's their job. We've hired them. We're paying them the money. They're here. They've consulted. That's it. And we can all have our our unique objections or our concerns or our votes against or our votes in favor. But I personally am not going to bog myself down in the legalities of this when we've had our expert opinion weigh in. I may have gone to law school, but I don't consider myself an expert on the land swap issues. So I'm happy to rely on Mr. Freitag, and I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
So, thank you. Chair's going to take a prerogative here, and unless Dave or Scott has anything new to add, or JJ, anything new to add to the conversation, perhaps we can move to a vote.
I'd like to just briefly respond to that, because that was directed to me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just briefly. Now, let me just change it up. Just for clarity, is that I'm not here to say that I'm to fulfill an obligation to the land, to the Lamb sisters. It's to the land, to that land, which was put into a conservation status that I would like to see remain in a conservation status. So it was, they put it in that status. And I don't think that anything that I have said is in opposition to town council. It
No.
doesn't have a vote. We have
And
the
I
vote.
didn't intend to imply that, Dave.
Yeah,
I apologize if that was
right.
So how it came across.
Scott, do you have anything quick to add?
I'd like to see us go to a vote.
Yep, I think we're, JJ, do you have something additional? Because otherwise we can move to a vote.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion on the table. It has been seconded. If there's no further discussion, the motion on the table is to recommend the swap as presented to the town meeting for approval. After we take this vote, if it is approved, if we want to add anything to the recommendation or to the comment, we are free to do so. But let's take the vote now. Lynn, can you take the roll, please?
Erin,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
John,
Lose myself.
Scott,
Scott, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, I'm still, what is a yes vote does what and a no vote?
A yes is recommending the swap to the town meeting for its approval.
No.
Okay.
Dave,
No.
Emily,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Muhammad,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Kristen,
No.
Lorraine,
Yes.
George.
I'm a no.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 yeses.
That carries. Okay, so that will go to the town meeting with a recommendation on a green sheet. I need a volunteer to write the comment. And should we choose to put the comment, include in the comment that is, if this is not approved or it is not used, I need a consensus that we would like to have the particular piece on the swap undone and sent back on Guile Road, sent back for conservation use. Is that something that is a sense of the committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair, I see Mr. Zulus's hand up.
I
just
do.
wanted to
Hello,
recognize him.
Mike. You have something for us?
Thank you, George. Just very briefly, and I don't want to take your time, but I feel constrained to speak just for 10 seconds on behalf of the school committee and its chair. There are valid and legitimate views in conflict here. There are different perspectives on this, but what is not legitimate and what is not warranted is to use words like unprincipled and duplicity and lack of integrity and lack of values. And I implore us, if we are going to disagree, which we will and we must, can we disagree civilly and courteously as neighbors without using those kind of terms? And I didn't want to interrupt the argument, the discussion, but I felt I had to wait around just to say that on behalf of the committee and its chair, because there's no place for that here. We can have discussions as neighbors without going to that level. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for that time.
Well, thank you, and I couldn't agree more. I think we do have to approach things in a civil fashion, which I think we do most of the time. Emotions are emotions, and everybody is subject to them after all. So, housekeeping. Who would like to write this opinion, this comment? Excuse me. Excuse me again.
George, I'll write it.
Christine, is that you? Oh, aren't you good? Thank you very much.
Lynn, when do you need it?
Whenever it's available, that's fine.
It's going to be a green sheet, Christine. So, we have a little time on this one.
Okie dokie.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we are, unless we have other information that is coming for us from
Mr.
any of the
Chairman?
other articles, and I don't expect any. Yes.
Can I interrupt?
Please.
As we're nearing the end of our agenda, I just wanted to officially congratulate our member Erin on her election to the select board. I know you did that at the beginning. Erin wasn't here then, so I just want to state that on behalf of the committee. We're proud and impressed with you, Erin, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Susanna. I'm sorry, I was in a select board meeting actually at 7 o'clock. So,
my God. You are a hero for sitting through that and then through this. So good for you.
Thank you. And thank you all. I learned everything from watching all of you debate and talk. And I look forward to my continued service for the town. So thank you all.
Having worked through these many years, I know that you're going to bring a very, very valuable point of view to the town. And if nothing else, you certainly have the courage of your convictions, which is very, very important.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Henny, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Just on a point of process and procedure, will Erin be maintaining both seats? Is there any rule concerning that, just out of sheer curiosity?
My understanding is it is legal for her to do so. It has not, I don't think it's happened recently, but I think she's entitled to do it. So the question is, at the town meeting, do you sit with us or do you sit with them? Because you still are our secretary, and you're the one that ran the.
I am. So, as you know, I'm kind of unprecedented anyways. So, I will be doing both.
You gotta wear those 4-inch heels.
Remember,
For a lot more important than wearing both in my 4-inch heels. Don't y'all worry.
No, they're gonna come.
One of a kind. They broke the mold.
So, no, I will be honored to finish serving my appointment and my election as secretary to this committee until the end of this term, which is the end of June. So thank you so much. There are rulings, and if anybody has any questions, they can check with the town clerk, who will be more than happy to talk to anybody about this, because she and I and the ethics and a lot of people have been involved. So yes, I will be serving on both until then. So thank you all. And thank you, Henny, for that question. So
Not trying to get rid of you, Erin. Just want to know.
I know.
George, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, John.
Is it safe now? I can ask a question.
Please, yeah, go ahead.
John, I love you.
When he said, I know the deck they wanted to use for parking, they took federal money and they couldn't use it. And I know they wanted to use Kelly Field at one time for a school and they couldn't use it because they took federal money. So I see how they took federal money for this land. I just don't know how they can decipher what's different.
I have no answer for that. I don't.
It's a legislative piece, Mr. Chair. So this is all part of this is just one step. It's just the same as when we approve a liquor license. It's the first step for a multiple stage process.
Yep.
This is a multiple stage process that will unfold before us. And so there'll be a lot of decisions, John. And by the way, I love you. I didn't mean to shut you down.
No, you didn't insult me, Aaron. No, I just want to see those 4-inch heels.
Oh, don't you worry. I got lots of them.
This is veering into the inappropriate. I'm sorry. I'm offended personally.
Thank you,
but
Member
that's why.
Haggerty. Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, I think that we have finished. I did see on the chat that we had one of our members of the public rather upset that he didn't get a chance to speak, but unfortunately, threatening litigation potentially, and he's free to do that. But I think that, you know, our policy has been and will be, as long as I am chair, that, you know, I have been advised by counsel that you know, the warrant committee is not obliged to have testimony from anybody, and the discussion is ours. And the simple fact that we entertain all points of view with appropriate notification so that we can plan our agenda, we are well within our legal responsibilities and rights. So I take issue a little bit with that sort of a threat, because I don't think it has any place in town government. And really the concept that we are, excuse me, not satisfying our responsibilities is out of place. So I just want to make sure that you all are aware that we do follow our processes, that the chair is extremely sensitive to the needs of people to speak, and when they do come forward with appropriate notification so that they're included on the agenda, which is an important part of what we do, and we observe our agenda, that everybody is given appropriate time to speak. And I thank you all once again for the time that you've devoted to this. I think we will probably not need another meeting until the town meeting, the annual town meeting, which is in May. I am pretty sure that we got everything done as we needed to for the warrant, which will be coming out shortly. And unless anybody has anything more to add, I think the chair can entertain a motion to adjourn until town meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm not going to ask for any discussion. Lynn, please take the roll.
John,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Erin,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes, please.
Dave,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Muhammad,
Yes.
O'Henny,
Yes.
and George.
Yes. So, as Jimmy Durante used to say, good night, Mrs. Calabash.
Again, Mr. Chairman, your age, your wisdom.
God, am I unpacking myself? Does anybody remember who Jimmy
Good
Durante
luck.
was? Good night, everybody. We'll see you later.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.